also fossilized wood, were common materials used in making these symbols of mourning. They became brooches, necklaces, rings, and bracelets. As we approach the end of the Civil War in 1865, Shelley is wearing her deep mourning gown, made of dull black silk, worn over a cage crinoline, which were worn from about 1858 until about 1865. It has knife pleats in the front and cartridge pleats in the back. Her gown takes about 9 yards of fabric. The wide two-piece coat sleeves were popular near the end of the war. Her collar and sleeve cuffs are black, signifying deep mourning, which would be exchanged for white during second mourning, when other mourning colors, lavender and deep gray, might be added. She is wearing mourning gloves, carries a mourning fan, a mourning parasol, a mourning cockade on her bodice. Am I going too fast, huh? A black mourning brooch, and a mourning handkerchief. There we go, we're caught up with each other, edged in black. Shelley is wearing a black spoon bonnet, lined with black flowers, and a weeping veil. Mourning etiquette dictated that when the veil was down, she was having a moment. When the veil was up, she could be approached. Shelley is an American Civil War reenactor who did indeed become a widow in 2003. She took on the persona as the Widow Peters, going into Victorian mourning for 3 years and a day, out of respect for her beloved husband. A man, on the other hand, upon losing his wife, would slap a black armband on for 2 weeks and then look to get remarried so his children would not remain motherless. Thank you, Shelley. In the 1870s, the huge skirts of the 60s have dropped down to a narrower silhouette with a smaller bustle in the back. This gown worn by Kathy was based on one currently in the collection of the Met. The late 1870s cut, covered entirely in silk crepe and devoid of any sheen or frivolous fluff, is communicating that the wearer is indeed in the deepest stages of mourning. It would have been considered disrespectful or in bad taste to be concerned with fashion extremes. So a dress cut plainly and minimally trimmed was the preferred style of dress for a woman mourning the loss of a spouse or child, the deepest of all mourning. A bonnet wholly covered in crepe, worn with a silk crepe veil, showing wide borders and deep hem, also shows this to be a deeply felt loss. Kathy wears a plain jet brooch at her throat in memory of her loved one. Thank you, Kathy. In 1886, skirts began popping up into a full bustle in the back, with hoops of fabric supported by a wire cage underneath. This demonstrated that wealthy and fashionable women would not give up their current styles, but still show deep respect and sorrow at the loss of her loved ones. The silk taffeta fabric and trims are indeed deep black. The front apron of the bustle skirt has an asymmetrical opening with borders of sawtooth trim. The French vest insert of velvet is bordered by a grosgrain sawtooth trim and is repeated on the cuffs. All 3 pieces of her gown were made using truly Victorian patterns, as indeed quite a few of the fashions that you saw today were indeed made. Her hat is the latest postman style, with a high crown and trimmed with ribbon, black feathers, and a glass buckle. Even her handkerchief is trimmed with black ribbon bordered on the sides. She wears a small jet brooch at her throat that has a window in the back to hold a lock of her loved one's hair. Thank you, Val. Following the 1890s, skirt shapes no longer needed to be supported by bustles and hoops. Long, graceful skirts became the style.